Welcome everyone. We've got a real special episode this time because we have our very first guest on the show. My good friend Nathan Yeung is here, who's a marketing expert, and we're going to talk about marketing. Before we get started, I want to just say hi to Nathan and also Faridun. Good to have you on the line as always, my man.
Good to be here. How's it going, Nathan?
Thank you so much. It's been great. Vancouver's been nice.
So this time we've got a nice little remote session. I'm in Toronto, Nathan's in Vancouver, and Faridun is in Calgary always. My friend Nathan and I were having a chat, and we were talking about marketing because that's his expertise. And we've in the previous podcast, we've always talked about, anytime we talked about businesses, I was always careful to emphasize how important sales is. And really at the core of any business is doing sales, because everyone's so concerned about getting their product perfect and their market perfect and et cetera, et cetera. But if you're not selling, then there's no point. And obviously marketing goes hand in hand with selling. So this is a really interesting and important topic to anyone who wants to get into any kind of business, whether you got a service or a product you got to sell, and marketing helps you sell. So Nathan, why don't you just introduce yourself a little, tell us a little about your own background, and fill everyone in on your expertise.
My background's a little eclectic. I was educated in marketing, but immediately went into finance, and then I had several years in management consulting. And I kind of made my way back into marketing for the last 6 years or so, and the last 3.5 years been really running my agency called Find Your Audience. There's a saying in the market where consultants tell and agents do, and we kind of do both. So I'm really lucky. I get broad exposure across a variety of industries, everything from national accounting firms to refrigeration engineering companies to consumer packaged products, down to e-commerce. And so I'm lucky. I get to see the ins and outs of B2C. And I get to see a lot of the ins and outs of B2B. And sales and marketing is always a big question.
Just for anyone who doesn't know, B2C is businesses that cater directly to clients, and B2B are businesses that cater to other businesses. Nathan, I think is one of these guys I've known for a long time, and he's a real entrepreneur, and he's always got something going on, and he's always networking, and he's always on top of his game. So I know he's when he's talking about all these various experiences, I know firsthand that he really puts a ton of time and effort, and I know he's got a lot of experience because he's always pushing forward and pushing hard. So Nathan, just to get started, man, why don't you give us the basics about marketing, what it is, what the goal is with marketing, and what sort of the earliest stage for a company to start looking at marketing?
So I think marketing really comes into play after you have a product and you know that you're really solving a pain point. What I think the biggest differentiation is marketing challenges how big of a pain point you're actually solving. Because when you need to market, you're not marketing to the one person across the street or the person across your desk. You're marketing to a much broader audience. And if you don't actually have a product that has a pain point that's broad enough, you're going to realize when you do your marketing campaign that your unique selling proposition, that hook, is just not strong enough. And a lot of entrepreneurs struggle when they talk to marketers, and marketers kind of force them to say, what is your differentiator? And often, right, more often than not, there isn't. Your relationship.
Well, that's actually one of the questions I was going to ask is, when people come to marketers, what questions should they be prepared to answer? But before we do that, one thing that kind of piqued my interest is, how would you, everyone sort of couples sales and marketing. You often even see people who have the title always, they carry the title together, like VP of sales and marketing. but there's a big difference between sales and marketing. How would you differentiate between sales and marketing?
I think we can differentiate in the sense of the size. And when you look at sales predominantly is a very small audience. A salesperson is not talking to 100 people on the later start of the funnel, right? They're managing, especially on the enterprise size, anywhere between 1 to 20 accounts. So they're dealing with 20 relationships. When it comes to marketing, you can think about it as pre-selling. Our job is to create messaging that's convincing enough to pre-sell products to a much broader audience. In another standpoint, one step, sales can be looked like marketing as well, but it's actually marketing through a person. And when you think about marketing, the only difference is it's actually marketing through not a person. It's through other mediums, digital, paper, email, whatever tactic you like to throw into it. And that's a good differentiating factor.
Right. What kind of trends do you see in terms of marketing? Like, what would you say are the mediums? Obviously, everything's online now. That goes without saying. But are there particular resources, tools, platforms that you go to, that you have a few things that are like top of your list, or do you have to gauge every different firm and every different business separately?
Every business and every industry has its own nuance. I'll give you an example. One of my health clients, a lot of his clients still receive fax. And so actually doing an email campaign didn't really actually make sense. So it's very industry oriented. On a business development perspective, some industries are more accepting of email. Some industries are more accepting of phone calls.
Right. And so let's go back to what we were brought up a little earlier. If somebody comes to you as a marketing expert, what questions should they be prepared to answer? And at what stage of their business are they really ready, or at least they're beginning to be ready enough to come to somebody like you?
I think they're going to answer a lot of questions they're not comfortable with. My usual questions are, do you have a budget? Have you ever even thought about it? And when was the last time you've actually audited how much you spent in marketing?
Right.
And have you actually defined what that marketing spend actually really looks like?
Right.
The second part is, what have you actually done? So what channels and tactics have you done, and have you even measured them? And is there a benchmark for you to measure against? And then the last one is, sell me. Tell me what your actual differentiating factor is. If you can't tell me why you're leaps and bounds better than your competitors, then you're ultimately going to fall into something where I call it a category benefit. A category benefit is where you solve the same problem everyone else is doing. The big four accounting firms, besides international reach, they all kind of do the same thing, right? It's a relationship play. And what was your second question, Ali?
At what stage do you think businesses are ready to start marketing? Do you think it's something that people need to start looking at almost immediately when they start their business, or do you think it's something they need to get ready for? So I guess, in other words, are there prerequisites that need to be in place before they can start doing any marketing?
There are some prerequisites, and I don't want to be too heavy-handed on how much you need to invest into it. If you're doing a startup, you can be scrappy. It's okay. Because you have to remember, if you're not doing marketing, you don't have 1 million people already knowing what you do. You have maybe 1,000. And so at the end of the day, if you restart the process, you're not damaging brand equity that really hasn't been built yet. So I would say fundamentally, they need to focus on their brand positioning. really focus on what part of the market are they actually selling into. And then you can start defining a brand image and the brand messaging around that. Picking a name,
Right.
I have been through so many client conversations where they spend so much time picking a name. And one of the things that I'm going to tell everyone listening to this, your opinion of your own business might not actually matter. It's about your customers. So unless you're going to
Absolutely.
tell me you have 100 people that just love the name that you're fighting for, you don't actually know if your brand name is good. So
Right.
just get started. Figure out what the market wants and do market research and be
Right.
scrappy. Go on Facebook groups, go on LinkedIn groups, go on Quora. Get people to tell you what their problems are and build from that marketing angle.
Right. Well, you brought up a few interesting things that I want to come to. One of them is often there's, like you're saying, get out there, do the work, go onto the Facebook groups, go and look at what the trends are. I find that a lot of times people are unwilling to do that grind work, and they're looking for a magic bullet, and they think, oh man, if I only had $1 million budget for marketing, I'd blow this business out of the water. But it's like, yeah, you know what, of course marketing is going to help you, but there's a lot you can do on your own to start the marketing process. And then once you build up enough traction, you can get into like, your professional level marketing. It's kind of like what your clients do with you and your firm.
Yes. The reason we've done so well is because we've realized we talk to a lot of business owners who make tactical decisions, and they come to us with tactical projects, and then they measure us on that output. And that's a bit of it doesn't really make sense. If you're making the strategic choice for a tactic, we're not accountable necessarily for the performance. And what we realized was there has to be some strategy behind it. And sometimes people don't like to do it because it's very easy to listen to your nephew or your niece, your cousin, your son, your grandfather, TikTok, LinkedIn, automation, Salesforce, HubSpot, all these shiny objects that supposedly solve a problem. And they get lost.
And so like and you're right, because there is a lot out there and it is easy to get lost. But even with proper marketing, one of the challenges that I've always found is it's not that easy or straightforward to gauge the level of the success. I'll give you a real silly example because it doesn't apply to most businesses. But let's say like MasterCard or Visa, when they do a ton of marketing with the World Cup. How do you assess the effect of something like that, right? Obviously, that's a really huge scale kind of a example, but I'm just using it as a way of illustrating my point. It's not easy to assess the immediate impact of a marketing campaign. And I find that in my experience, you really have to be patient with marketing, because it's one of those things that takes time to build a brand and build a sort of a name and get yourself out there and for people to become familiar with you. So I find that sometimes people are a little impatient. They want to sort of say, okay, I'm going to give you, $500 for marketing. What am I going to get? And it doesn't quite work that way. What are your thoughts on that? Do you deal with that with your clients?
I deal with that all the time, Ali. And
I bet.
I think the fact of the matter is it's a pipe dream to assume marketing as a function will be a quant stream. You can't quantitatively measure every single part of the funnel. It's just not possible. And frankly speaking, there's a ton of legal language in California, in Europe, that have prevented technology to really allow that. We're not allowed to track people if it's uniquely identifiable information. we're not supposed to have it. So now when someone does a MasterCard sponsorship and they drive them through a unique link, we're only going to get so much information unless that person opts in to give that information, which means we have to give them an offer, or we have to get them through a form, or we have to get them coming back very consistently so that there is some sort of reference point of who this individual is, so we know that's a returning visitor. So it's a pipe dream. Anyone who wants to measure every single thing in their marketing funnel is ultimately going to be disappointed and is likely not going to get the outcome they want.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. I think you obviously summed it up really well, and your experience, obviously, you've seen this in play all the time. But if you start a marketing campaign, I think one of the most important things is the consistency of your message and being able to consistently get out in front of your audience. How important does it become then at the early stages for people to have, a sense of who their audience is and who it is that they're trying to reach, so that they can gear their marketing campaign towards that group?
I think that comes down to a growth strategy. A lot of services fit into different markets. And at the end of the day, it's your strategic choice on what audience you really want to go to. And that really comes down to how big is the size, how accessible are they, how fast is the purchasing cycle, and you have to make that choice. I don't necessarily think you want to just go on the angle of what's the easiest to sell. If it's the easiest to sell, it's likely that competitors are also going to be in that space very easily as well.
Sure.
So it has to be a fine balance between the two. And I'll give you an example. I talk to a lot of mid-market businesses. I don't get contracts in a month. I typically take 90 to anywhere between 120 days. A lot of people starting up a business aren't going to enjoy that idea.
That makes sense. I'm going to change gears on you a little bit, Nathan, because you and I met through an event that you put on. It was we met prior to that, but this is how we became close. You've always been hosting these networking events where you invite, your circle of successful entrepreneurs and people that you've worked with in the past, or friends that you've come across, and you do these awesome dinners and people get together, and it's a great opportunity to network. And the reason why I'm changing gears is because a big part of marketing your product and your business is also marketing yourself. Like you and I are both, people who represent our own firms. We're out at industry events, we meet with clients, and our own personal brand and how we market ourselves, everything from the way we dress to our haircut to keeping in good shape, or the way we speak, the way we approach things. All of that goes and gets bundled up into this package that becomes you, and then you have to market that. So you establish yourself and you create an aura where people do want to work with you. So I also don't want to, I don't want to sidestep that. I don't want to end this podcast before I talk to you a little bit about that, because you've always been very good at how you present yourself, and also you've been good at bringing people in. So that allows you to market yourself to this group of successful people, but it also allows them a platform to market to each other. And I just want to get you to talk to the audience a little about that whole marketing yourself, and about that your own brand also being important, not just your business or your product or your day-to-day procedures. You at the core of your business are also very important.
Reputation is everything. You have to have integrity. I am very reluctant to ever agree to anything unless I can do it. And that's fundamentally how my brand has been built. Ali, when we're doing this, you told me, this is the first time for me to show my face in public. And because I'm a majority of a private guy, and when I throw these networking events, you have to come through someone I know, and I'm not really out there promoting it. I promote it to the people that I met and I've personally vetted. And predominantly it's come from this angle where when I was younger, I was not a nice person, and I thought that was a great way to find good people. It's counterintuitive. I'm mean, and if you're strong enough and willful enough to come through my terrible personality, you must be a good person. And I did that because I was always scared of being hurt. And I think I've told you this. So predominantly,
well, you're a self-aware person, and then we've talked about that before, but that's one of the most important things I think for anybody to always be focused on, like self-awareness. But yeah, no, it's very I think strong of you to be able to admit to that.
It's not easy. It took a long time, right?
No.
But that was the foundation of the brand. I had decided that was enough. And, I used the saying, you heard the saying, everyone that comes to this event needs to know that you're going to put your best foot forward. And you need to be okay knowing that someone might take that right foot and you still have your left. And that's predominantly who I am. Everyone that knows me knows that when they ask for a favor and I agree, I will go through with that favor, whether that's a relationship, whether that's help, whether that's picking up coffee for them. I will agree. I will be on time. I'm a person who keeps to my word. And for all those that listening, I'm everyone that knows me at my events, you can't be late. Be respectful. You have a phone.
Yeah.
You have text messages, you have WhatsApp, you have Instagram, you have LinkedIn, you have TikTok. Choose whatever platform you want. Have the decency. You know you're going to be late. You tell people you're going to be late. Don't be shy about it, because it's rude for you just to...
I've seen people firsthand no longer be welcome at your event. So I know you mean it when you say that.
And the amount of people that tell me they're so impressed by me being on time is shameful. It's just shameful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you know what? It's funny because I get that too. People are like, "Oh, you're always punctual." I'm like, "What else can you be?" Like, of course I'm punctual. Everyone should be punctual.
Yeah, or have the decency to let us know.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Going back to brand, my brand's integrity. I don't try to sell my marketing services, and if I do, it's for free. I've reached out to everyone I know. You have a niece, nephew, son, cousin, sister, I don't care who it is. You're starting a business. You need help. Send me an email. I'll help you. I don't care.
That's awesome, and I've seen that firsthand.
I just had a couple questions, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
So is there any aspect of marketing that's relatively new that excites you right now? Is there anything that you're really excited about?
So it's not new. It's probably just an evolution. Influencer marketing works, but it doesn't work in the way that everyone thinks it is. The reality is there's a lot of people that are following people, not necessarily for the same reason why they want to look at your brand.
Right.
And there's something very important about being able to get influencers who have microcosms of groups, because they're naturally very interested in who they are, where they're going, what they're doing, what they're buying. And that excites me. The reason a lot of agencies aren't excited about it is because when you get $100,000 to deploy, it's very easy to go to 2 influencers than it is to go to 100. And they make a lot more money going to the 2 because it's going to take 2 hours versus the 100.
Right.
So this is where there's a conflict of interest. This is where I get annoyed as a marketer.
Right.
Right? Do the right thing for your companies, and they'll keep you. So that excites me. I love search engine optimization. It's not a sexy industry, but it's a long-term investment. And if you do it really well, it pays dividends. But again, it's patience. Everyone wants that quick win. But guess what? Search engine optimization is like buying farmland that you know is going to get developed 7 years down the road.
Right.
No one wants it. No one wants to do it. Massive value if you do it right.
Right. And if you could just spend because I know that this is something a lot of people, especially with new businesses, start using this influencer marketing that you were discussing. Is there any advice you have for people that are looking to get into influencer marketing or looking to reach out to influencers?
Be careful.
Okay.
Make sure that they actually follow through with what they say you're going to do, and provide a level of scale. So don't think that one micro influencer is going to push a campaign. It's going to get a lot of people interested, but you really need to do the work to try to get some scale. So if you can only afford to do 1 or 2 influencers, don't do it. Spend the money somewhere else.
Okay.
You need to have a certain amount of reach in order for a micro influencer campaign to be effective.
Got you. And then separate question. So the name of this podcast is Life's Golden Nuggets. And so kind of keeping with that, I was going to ask, is there any one piece of advice that either you've been given or that you would like to give that you think is a good, general, valuable piece of advice?
Absolutely. I have so many.
Sure.
Ali knows this.
Give some if you have a few nuggets that you can just roll off, just list them.
Know that your willpower is your driving gasoline tank. It is what's going to fuel you for everything you do in your future, and you need to appreciate it and respect it and understand how to use it. And that means keeping a very positive mental state. And I know that sounds very fluffy, but going through some dips in a business, you have to learn to manage that. The second thing is, when you're an entrepreneur, and if you want to start a business, get very, very comfortable not knowing anything, and be okay. Don't be scared. I know so many people who are so afraid to learn new skills because they're afraid of just failing to nobody but themselves. Oh, guess what? You're the only judge of character. So just do it.
Yeah.
And when you're ready to show off your skill sets, show it off. Right? And the last thing, it is reputation. There is nothing more important than your reputation. Even if you don't have any skills in the world, if you have a good reputation, there are going to be people that will help you, respect you, introduce you, and it's the biggest investment you ever have, and it's very, very fragile. So don't.
Very well said.
Yeah.
Don't ever think.
That's very well said. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Before we wrap it up, I'm just going to reiterate what I took away from your comments tonight, Nathan. For marketing, you got to have your product first. You got to do your research, get out there, Facebook groups, whatever you need to do to know your audience, know your advantage. What is it that makes your product or your service better? Have a budget, and then go to an expert and get it done.
Sounds about right.
Very succinct.
All right, man. Appreciate having you on this podcast. I think we can do more. I think this is a really big topic, and you've got a lot of expertise, so you've got a lot of knowledge to share. But let's wrap it up for this one episode, and hopefully we'll do more in the future. Thank you for joining us.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Nathan.
All right, everyone. Stay in there and be great.
Take care.
Cheers.